Ethan Parker hadn't been on a real date in over 5 years. Since the divorce, his life had narrowed to two things: providing for his daughter Lily and keeping the bills paid, even if it meant working himself into exhaustion. He was a delivery driver by day, warehouse worker by night, and still, most months ended with him staring at his bank account wondering what else he could cut back on. Dating. That was a luxury, a foolish dream. But when his coworker, Josh, kept pestering him about a friend named Claire, Ethan finally caved. Josh had described her as kind, down-to-earth, someone who wasn't looking for fancy, just real. Ethan almost laughed at the irony. Real was all he had to offer. The morning of the date, Ethan stood in front of the mirror with Lily at his side. At 7 years old, she had inherited her mother's dark hair but his wide, curious eyes. She giggled as she straightened the collar of his only decent button-up shirt, a navy blue one he usually saved for holidays. "You look like a prince, Daddy," she declared proudly, stepping back with her hands on her hips. "A prince, huh?" Ethan smiled tiredly. "What if I feel more like a pumpkin?" Lily shook her head so fiercely her ponytail swished. "Nope, you're a prince. She's going to like you. I know it." Her words warmed him more than any pep talk could have. For her, he could do this. Even if it scared him. Even if his wallet felt like it was mocking him. He checked his balance one last time before leaving. After bills, groceries, and gas, he had exactly $50 left. That was supposed to last him until Monday, but tonight, he'd have to risk it. He'd already decided. He would order something modest, nothing fancy, and hope Claire didn't find him cheap. The restaurant was more upscale than he imagined. White tablecloths, soft golden lighting, a pianist in the corner filling the air with gentle notes. Ethan paused at the door, his stomach twisting. He didn't belong here. Every detail screamed of wealth and polish, and he was a man barely keeping the lights on at home. Still, he walked in. "Reservation?" the host asked, giving him a once-over. Yes, Parker. For two." The host nodded politely and led him to a table near the center. Ethan sat, fingers fidgeting with the edge of the menu. The prices made his throat tighten. $28 for pasta, $36 for steak. Even the appetizers were more than what he usually spent on dinner for him and Lily combined. He slipped his hand into his pocket, feeling the folded bills there. 120, 2 tens, 1 5, $50, flat. He couldn't afford embarrassment. He couldn't afford extravagance. Tonight would be simple: water, the cheapest entree, smile, laugh, and maybe, just maybe, make Claire feel like this wasn't a mistake. When Claire walked in, Ethan's nerves wavered. She was stunning in a soft, effortless way: shoulder-length hair, a warm smile, eyes that sparkled with a kindness that immediately set him at ease. She spotted him, and relief washed over her face too, as if she had been just as nervous. "Ethan?" she asked gently. He stood so quickly he nearly knocked his chair over. "Yes, hi, Claire." They shook hands, then laughed at how formal it felt. As they sat down, Ethan noticed how she didn't immediately bury herself in her phone or scan the room like she was searching for someone better. Instead, she looked at him, attentive and curious. "Josh's famous mystery man," she teased. "I was beginning to think you didn't actually exist." Ethan chuckled. "I almost thought about not existing tonight. But, here I am." That earned him a laugh, light and genuine, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt the knot in his chest loosen. They talked. About her work as a teacher. About his delivery routes. About Lily, who came up naturally in the conversation, and Claire listened with interest rather than polite nods. Ethan found himself smiling, forgetting for brief moments the constant weight of his financial reality. When the server came, Ethan ordered the simplest pasta dish and water. Claire, to his relief, ordered a salad and iced tea. Nothing extravagant, nothing that would tip the bill into panic territory. Still, his mind kept flicking back to the $50. He couldn't shake it. He didn't notice at first the man sitting at the table nearby. Richard Vaughn was the kind of presence that drew attention without trying. Broad-shouldered, sharp in a tailored suit, silver streaks in his hair that only made him look more distinguished. He was a man used to being seen, but tonight, he had chosen the restaurant for its quiet. A break from boardrooms, negotiations, and the endless hum of people who wanted something from him. But instead of finding silence, he found himself watching the young father 2 tables over. Richard noticed the nervous way Ethan folded the menu, scanning prices before landing on the cheapest thing. He noticed the calloused hands, the slight sag beneath his eyes that spoke of exhaustion. But more than that, he noticed how Ethan listened, really listened, to the woman across from him, leaning in when she spoke, smiling even when his own nerves peeked through. Richard's gaze shifted to the wallet Ethan pulled from his pocket when the server delivered the check. He saw the way the man unfolded the receipt slowly, almost carefully, before sliding a neat stack of bills onto the table. Not a credit card, not a flourish, just cash, folded twice, pressed down like it mattered more than anyone else in the room could understand. Richard knew that look. He had worn it himself once, decades ago, before the companies, the mansions, the headlines. Back when every dollar counted, and dignity was the only armor he had. He swirled his wine glass slowly, eyes lingering on Ethan, and thought, this man has no idea someone is watching. No idea his struggle is written in the smallest details. And yet, there's a strength here. A rare kind of honesty I don't see anymore. For Ethan, though, the world had narrowed to one simple hope, that Claire didn't see the cracks. That she didn't notice how carefully he was balancing this night on a fragile $50. As they walked out of the restaurant together, he let out a slow, secret sigh of relief. The date had gone better than he expected, but he didn't know yet that the most important moment of the night hadn't happened at his table at all, it had happened at the one right beside it. The eyes of a billionaire had been watching, and Richard Vaughn wasn't the type to ignore potential when he saw it. The bill had been settled, but Ethan still felt the knot in his stomach as he and Claire stepped toward the door. He had managed to cover dinner with his precious $50, leaving just enough for a tip. But as he walked beside Claire, a nagging voice in his mind whispered, she probably noticed. She probably thinks you're broke. She probably won't want to see you again. Claire, however, seemed anything but disappointed. You know, she said as they reached the foyer, I was nervous about tonight. Blind dates usually don't turn out this well. Her tone was light, genuine. It stopped Ethan mid-step. Really? She nodded, her smile softening. You're easy to talk to. It felt real, not like some performance. Her words sank into Ethan's chest like warmth after a long winter. He had been so worried about appearances, about money, that he hadn't realized what she valued most was honesty and presence. He almost let himself believe the night had been a success. And then, excuse me, the deep, commanding voice startled him. Both he and Claire turned to find the older man who had been sitting a few tables away. He stood tall, a quiet authority radiating from his tailored suit, his glass of wine still in hand as though he had been waiting for this moment. I don't mean to interrupt, the man said, stepping closer, but I couldn't help noticing you tonight. Ethan flushed instantly, noticing. He glanced at Claire, embarrassed, certain the stranger was about to point out something humiliating, perhaps the way he had carefully counted his bills. I'm sorry if we disturbed you, Ethan stammered. On the contrary, the man's lips curved into a knowing smile. I found it refreshing. Watching you reminded me of a time before my life was complicated. He reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a sleek, embossed card. He handed it to Ethan with a steady hand. Richard Vaughn, CEO, Vaughn Enterprises. The golden letters glimmered under the foyer lights. Ethan's breath caught. He had seen that name before. In newspapers, business magazines, even headlines about one of the country's most influential men. Mr. Vaughn, Claire whispered, stunned. Ethan stared at the card, unsure what to say. Why would someone like Richard Vaughn be speaking to him? A warehouse worker, a delivery driver, a single dad who had just emptied his last $50 for one night of normalcy. I watched you tonight, Richard continued, his voice low but firm. The way you carried yourself. Nervous, yes, but dignified. Every man at some point struggles with limited means. I started my career that way. But what stood out wasn't the money you didn't have, it was the way you treated the woman sitting across from you. The way you listened. The way you carried responsibility on your shoulders without complaint. Ethan's throat tightened. No one had ever noticed those things. Not his ex-wife, who had left because she was tired of struggling. Not his bosses, who treated him like he was replaceable. And now here was a man with more wealth than Ethan could imagine, telling him those small, invisible choices mattered. I don't understand, Ethan admitted quietly. Richard's smile deepened. You don't have to. Not yet. But I'd like you to come to my office on Monday morning. Vaughn Enterprises headquarters. Ask for me directly. I think I might have an opportunity that suits someone like you. Ethan blinked, completely overwhelmed. An opportunity? For me? Yes, Richard said simply. I recognize potential when I see it. Men like you are rare. Men who value dignity over pride, who can shoulder responsibility without losing kindness. That's the kind of foundation I build my company on. And it's the kind of man I want in my organization. Claire's eyes widened, her hand brushing Ethan's arm in silent encouragement. She looked as astonished as he felt, but there was no doubt in her gaze, only belief. I don't know what to say, Ethan murmured. Say yes, Richard replied firmly. Come see me. You don't owe me gratitude. Just bring the same work ethic and character I saw tonight. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice hoarse. Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. I won't waste it. Richard extended his hand, his grip strong, steady. I know you won't. With that, the billionaire CEO turned and walked out into the night, leaving Ethan holding the card as though it were made of solid gold. For a moment, Ethan simply stood there, his world tilted on its axis. He had walked into the restaurant terrified of losing $50, and walked out with a chance that could change his and Lily's life forever. 2 days later, Monday morning arrived faster than Ethan thought possible. He barely slept Sunday night, pacing his small apartment, staring at the business card over and over. Lily noticed his restlessness. Daddy, what's wrong? She asked as he tucked her into bed. Nothing's wrong, sweetheart, he whispered, smoothing her hair. Something good might happen. Something big, and if it does, it's all for you. She beamed sleepily, her trust absolute. I know you can do it, Daddy. Those words became his anchor. When he entered Vaughn Enterprises headquarters that morning, Ethan felt out of place again. The gleaming skyscraper stretched into the clouds, its lobby filled with polished marble, towering plants, and executives in sharp suits. His own shirt was freshly ironed, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being a small fish in an ocean of sharks. But the receptionist, upon seeing the card, immediately ushered him to the top floor. Mr. Vaughn is expecting you. Ethan's palms sweated as he entered the office. The view behind the desk stretched across the city skyline. Richard stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, before turning to greet him with the same calm authority as before. You came, Richard said. Good. That tells me you're serious. Yes, sir, Ethan replied, trying to steady his voice. Richard gestured for him to sit. Let me be clear, I'm not offering charity. I don't hand out favors. What I offer is a chance. I believe you have qualities most men in this building lack. Integrity, humility, the ability to endure without bitterness. I want men like you in leadership. People my employees can look at and say, that man understands me. Ethan's head spun. Leadership. At Vaughn Enterprises. It seemed impossible. I'll start you in a management training program, Richard continued. The pay will be more than you've ever earned, but the expectations will be higher too. You'll work harder than you ever have. But if you succeed, you won't just be providing for your daughter. You'll be building a future that secures her for life. Ethan's voice cracked as he asked, why me? Richard's eyes softened, just slightly. Because I've been where you are. Once, I sat in a cheap restaurant, praying my date wouldn't notice I could barely afford her meal. And someone saw me, gave me a chance. Tonight, I return the favor. Ethan sat in stunned silence. And then, slowly, he nodded. I'll do it. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. Richard smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. That evening, Ethan picked Lily up from school. She ran into his arms, her backpack bouncing, her laughter bright. Daddy, how was your big thing today? She asked eagerly. Ethan knelt, looking into her shining eyes. He didn't tell her everything. She was too young to understand the weight of opportunity, but he said the one thing he knew was true. Sweetheart, he whispered, hugging her tightly, everything's going to be different now. Better. For both of us. As he carried her home, the card still in his pocket, Ethan realized something extraordinary. He had walked into that restaurant with nothing but $50 and hope. He walked out with something priceless, a chance to rewrite his life, because someone had finally seen him. And this time, he wasn't going to let it slip away.